We all know how special the Gulf Islands are. Each of us has a story for how we fell in love and built a life here. The coastal Douglas fir forests filled with cedars, mosses, and ferns. Gary oak meadows and arbutus trees. The farms, markets, and local shops. The artists and craftspeoples. Galleries, spiritual centers, and endless outdoor pursuits. What we have on Salt Spring is so very precious and rare. A compassionate, creative community nestled in one of the most beautiful natural places left on Earth. Coast Salish people have stewarded these lands since time immemorial, maintaining a state of balance. We didn't get here by accident. In the 1970s, a radical model to preserve and protect both the Gulf Islands' natural environment and unique culture and community was enshrined into law. This unique model, valuing conservation over unchecked development, has been for the most part a roaring success. It was a radical and visionary model for the 1970s. But our world has changed quite a lot in the last 50 years, and not always for the better. So we asked some local leaders, just how resilient is Salt Spring to the challenges of our 21st century world?
When I first moved here, I thought, wow, this island must have it totally figured out. Food security, food sustainability, self-sufficiency, food sovereignty, all of these exciting ideas of how a community can learn to feed itself. And that is happening, but I was shocked to learn that estimates are that Salt Spring only grows about maybe 10% of the food that it eats here on the island. And I think that number needs to be shared with everybody, because there really is this view that a lot of people have that we must be just feeding ourselves with this amazing abundance of food. Yet so much of it comes from those trucks on and off the ferry every day, coming to Thrifty's and Country Grocer. And if we have a chance at responding to the changes that are coming in the next few decades with climate change and the social disruption, the economic disruption, the political disruption that is going to come from all of these changes, we better learn how to feed ourselves here on this island and within our local bioregion. We cannot continue to keep relying on Mexico and California and Peru and China and all of these other countries to feed us. Because if we do, when they stop selling their food, sending it over on ships, what are we going to do?
I think if we don't do anything about climate change on Salt Spring Island, we're going to increase our vulnerability to the risks that come with climate change. We're looking at rising oceans. We're looking at forest fire danger, which is increasing exponentially. We're looking at a lot of stresses on our ability to grow food on this island, which I think will be an important issue in the coming years in terms of maintaining food security.
When we're in a climate crisis, we shouldn't be cutting down 5 acres of forest and putting in grapevines. We should be, keeping as many trees as we can. Like seeing a huge 5-acre or 10-acre piece of land on Salt Spring being stripped of all its trees is heartbreaking. It's the last thing we need in a climate emergency.
Housing is at its root one of the biggest problems for businesses on the island. Often you'll see job postings saying local housing required to even begin the process. Some businesses have housing purchased for their employees, so they live in sort of dorm style housing or shared housing, and then other businesses have employees that commute daily. We know of one that's up to 30 employees a day that come from off island, which adds a significant cost to the person as well as the company.
The average Joe on Salt Spring Island has to come to realize that we do have a housing problem, and that just wishing nobody would come here anymore is not going to solve the problem. There's already more people living here than there is homes. And so people are having to move away, and the people who are moving away are the folks that we need the most. They are the working folks on the island.
I love Salt Spring, but I feel like we lack a lot of diversity, which I'm really interested in experiencing more of.
we've lived in the bottom of a store in town, the basement of a store, and we've lived in like a 3-story building. But like, it's just like, it's hard because everything's so sporadic and it's targeted towards people who are wealthy and people who will contribute to like the economy of Salt Spring. When like there's all these people here who've lived here their whole lives
And we live here all
and
year.
who appreciate nature and who go to school here and work here, who don't have affordable places to live at all. Another issue we face in relation to housing is the usage of Airbnb on Salt Spring, because so many houses and apartments and condos and everything, cottages, they're all being listed online for short-term rentals instead of long-term rentals, which people who live here and are moving here, who could contribute to the community and already do contribute to the community, aren't able to live at. So we're left looking and being homeless when there's people coming for 2 weeks at a time, a month at a time, 4 days at a time, who are using up all the spaces for us.
It's a very great place to raise your children. You know, it's safer than a big city, but there's a lot of racism on Salt Spring. I have experienced personally a lot of racism on this island. I've been screamed at to go back where I come from. I've been called the N-word by adults, by children. While we're pushing for change, there is an onslaught of community members here who are pushing back at us. So are meeting us with violence, who are meeting us with threats, you know, threatening people to burn down their houses and threatening young women on the island for their bodily safety, you know, and watching us. And I've been talking to the RCMP. We are reporting everything, but at the same time, it feels a little unsafe right now. And I'm not going to stop fighting. I'm just going to keep pushing.
Cycling on Salt Spring, I would like it to be easy and easygoing and feel really safe. We do it anyway. We kind of act as if it already is like that. But there's a lot of moments where you're kind of hoping that that truck isn't really going to hit you with its mirror. And, you know, I keep an eye on my girls in the back mirror, in my side mirror, to make sure they're okay. It definitely requires some courage, I think. Yeah, right now.
We already have hundreds of commuters coming here daily to work, and more all the time, driving cars from Nanaimo and Victoria because they can't find a home here. Many people who serve our community now own their own homes from a previous era when things were more affordable. The next generation cannot afford to take their place. There is literally nowhere for them to live. Our community is facing decline. The signs are already here. Like many desirable communities, a combination of intense tourism pressures, skyrocketing land and home prices, rising inequality, and worsening impacts of the climate and biodiversity crises are pushing systems way out of balance. We wanted to zoom out and find how is Salt Spring rising to the challenge of these issues. The average house price in Salt Spring in 2019 was $835,000. The household income required to afford this average house price is $136,000 per year. The median household income on Salt Spring is just $59,000. Young working class families owning their own home is the bedrock of a stable and healthy community. The living wage for Salt Spring Island is $21 per hour, higher even than the living wage for Metro Vancouver. A single person in Salt Spring earning minimum wage spends close to 60% of their income on rent, if they can find a place. There is now a 0% vacancy rate, little hope for community members of all kinds looking for housing, including healthcare workers, teachers, massage therapists, and other well-paid professionals, not to mention all the other Salt Springers who serve our community, from cashiers and baristas to creative types and entrepreneurs. 48% of island employers have difficulty finding staff. Our student enrollment has declined over 20% since the early 90s, despite a 35% increase of total population over the same time. Our middle school is now closing, largely due to this decline. Almost all the new growth of population is over 60. Meanwhile, the younger population is declining. The signs of changing demographics are clear. With nowhere for young families to live, this change is now increasing even more. What does the future hold? Who will serve our aging community? Meanwhile, a certain kind of development is rampant. There are hundreds of multi-million-dollar single-family dwellings being built, far from town, clearing forests and mountainsides, using up massive resources per person housed, and requiring massive energy to maintain and operate over time. Yet, it is not legal to build multiple small dwellings with a much smaller total footprint and much less net impact on the environment. We live in a rare ecological area that is coastal Douglas fir forest, but their health is being impacted at an alarming rate. There is less than 1% of old growth left on the island, and only 3.5% of that is protected. Meanwhile, only 11% of remaining mature forests are protected. Wait, that can't be right. Aren't we one of Canada's greenest and most progressive communities? How did we let this happen? What's our local government doing to address this? The truth is, governments everywhere have trouble keeping up with all of these pressures. But here, seemingly by design, it's hard to find someone responsible, much less to take the lead on solutions. In some ways, no one is really in charge of Salt Spring. Look, we don't mean to be a downer. There's so much about this community that is amazing. This isn't an issue of being for or against the island's trust or specific local politicians. It's about asking ourselves, are we equipped to manage the big challenges of this community faces today? What about what's coming at us in the next 20 years? No one in Ottawa or Victoria is going to figure this out for us. There is no one else. It's just us. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe we are the ones we have been waiting for.
It would look like there is more diversity on things like the chamber and the CRD and teachers. But for me, the first thing is dealing with our racist past. And also, yes, we want people with money here, but there also needs to be people who grind the coffee, clean the houses, wipe the butts, and these people need to be able to live and feed their families as well.
I think there's a lot of factors standing in the way of a healthy, diverse, local, regenerative food system here on Salt Spring. Regulation is definitely one factor. It's really hard to be a farmer and try and grow food in healthy, ecologically sound ways. It's really hard to find enough, not so much to find enough labor, it's hard to be able to support people to make a living as a farmer, to have stable housing that they can be living on the land that they're farming so that they feel like they are able to put down roots here on Salt Spring. And so regulation around farm worker housing is a big issue. My ideal scene for Salt Spring around food and agriculture looks like a lot of small, diverse farms scattered around the island producing a whole bunch of different foods.
Yeah, rainwater harvesting can contribute to a resilient community, I believe. A lot of people rely on this source for their potable water, 100%. They also use it to supplement wells and, again, for irrigation to grow their own food.
Without proper housing for all levels of income, our economy will not be able to flourish because we won't have qualified workers on the island. Other things that play a big role in it are the decentralized government that we have. Not having a specific leader on the island that the community can go to causes some issues, especially when we're going through times like these where leadership is needed. And then also the general silos of Salt Spring. So all sectors have them, all focus groups have them, that everyone has an opinion, and not everyone has an opinion, but the varying opinions create groups to solve problems, which dilutes the resources that each group actually ends up having. So bringing them all back together and being able to work together in a collaborative manner will help us reach those goals. Another thing that's standing in the way of us reaching our economic goals is the lack of cohesive community vision, because we don't have anything that we can work towards that the community has come to agreement on.
We're going to have to change how we look at our ecosystems. Our ecosystems are actually providing services to us, which will become more important in the coming years. We need to change how we look at forests. Instead of being a risk to our communities from the point of view of fire in the years to come, we need to look at them as actually a partner in ensuring our resilience and our stability as a community. I think the best outcome for Salt Spring Island, if we do it right with respect to climate change, is we electrify our transportation. That just doesn't mean electric cars, it means our ferries. It means also communities where people can safely bicycle. It also means a mix of housing on this island that actually meets the needs of the people who want to live here. It means an island where we're growing a lot more of our own food, where we're actually getting back to growing grain like we used to do 100 years ago on this island. We've got a lot of fruit, but we could actually do a lot more on this island in terms of sustaining our own population. And a community that actually knows how to talk to each other really well across difference. Those are the ingredients that we really need to make sure that we've got a future that's better than the one we're heading towards right now.
We need to be able to have greater densities on a small piece of property, and to change our thinking from big houses on a piece of property to 2 or 3 smaller places that take up roughly the same amount of floor space, but allow for more people to live on the property. So many different ways that we can improve the quality of life on Salt Spring, make room for the people who live here and want to stay here and who are struggling to find a place to live. We need to be building close to town and within walking distance to town.
Having smaller dwellings, having shared utilities, having water catchment systems, having gray water systems, composting toilets. I mean, we really shouldn't be pooping and drinking water. And it would be those kinds of things, making that stuff easier for people, I think and having that be something like, if you do this, here's an incentive. This will make your permits cheaper or something like that. If you're going to go ahead and do all these things, then you can have a third dwelling, that's under 600 square feet, that has a shared utility with the already second dwelling that's allowed, or something like that. I think there's a lot of flexibility. If we're gonna limit the carbon that is outputted in the world, we need to stop bringing things in from really, really far away. And building out local materials is crucial to that. And have those local materials be as natural as possible is also crucial to that.
Climate solutions and housing solutions are 2 sides of the same coin. Climate and environment on the one hand, and habitat for people on the other hand, are again things that cannot be put into different silos. I think housing can be looked at in a couple of ways. One relates to buildings, the size of our homes, the design of our homes, the materials in our homes, the ability to either build new or retrofit old in ways that are thoughtfully designed for quality of life and environmental impacts. At the same time, there's the land use part of climate and environment. And when I think about Salt Spring, I don't typically think about New York, but one of the things we've learned is that the greenest ways that people can live on this planet are to live densely in cities. And that's because they aren't chewing up lots of land, and in the case of Salt Spring, forest land that sequesters carbon and hosts biodiversity. They aren't chewing up lots of land just to have a bunch of people living there. We can take those principles of good design and density that come from urban environments and modify them and apply them here on Salt Spring by creating vibrant, walkable villages with great infrastructure, transportation, safe 24-hour small communities. And we can do that without having to put every new household onto a 2, 3, 5, 10-acre parcel that clear cuts precious, rare coastal Douglas fir forest.
So I think that Salt Spring has a lot of potential, but we're just not acting on it.
If we could just hear what the youth had to say more and integrate it into the community, I think that could be super helpful.
Getting around on my bicycle has meant that I haven't needed a car, and then therefore I don't have to spend money on a car. And it's really important, and it's given me a huge autonomy.
Having a tourist industry revived by having safe cycling, so people actually want to come and cycle here instead of avoiding our island particularly, would be transformative. There's just so many great ways that we could still expand our economy but have the climate impact actually go down.
Working together, we can make Salt Spring the kind of community that works for everyone, that is green because we actually live with less impact on the environment, that treats all of our people the same regardless of the color of our skin or how much money we make. We can be a beacon of hope in the Salish Sea, a community that sets a global example. We can come up with solutions to these problems, as well as learn from other communities. There are many creative examples, such as we can look to local Indigenous people and their traditional knowledge about how to live in harmony with this place. Through ancestral knowledge of place and purpose, Indigenous leadership is foundational to forging our new reality. We can build housing closer together so that other areas can be protected from clear-cutting. This also makes for safer, more vibrant village centers. We can conserve water across the whole housing stock, support everyone to capture more water from the sky, and come up with more holistic ways of managing island-wide water delivery. We can encourage eco-building and low-resource techniques for all new built homes. We can create eco-village zoning and co-op housing, limiting house size and allowing for flexible density metrics as a reward for conserving ecosystems in covenants. We can support farm worker housing and permaculture farming that benefits from the capital of shared labor and land resources. We can legalize existing cottages, allow suites and accessory buildings, and tighten restrictions on short-term vacation rentals. We can provide tax credit for land held in covenants that will reward landowners for leaving forests standing. We can get green recovery funding to fix our dangerous main roads connecting Vesuvius to Fulford, putting in bike lanes that will make cycling and driving safer for everyone, and not wait 20 years for it. But we can't do all this if our community continues to think change isn't possible, or all change is bad, saying no to everything new or creative or different. If we throw up our hands and say, we can't do that here, and think everything is fine. British writer George Monbiot talks about saving the future by rewilding not only nature, but our democracy. What that means is communities taking control of their futures, not expecting some other higher power to do it for them. The higher powers that got us into these messes. Rewilding democracy means rolling up our sleeves and building a better, more just, more resilient, and sustainable world. One capable of fixing big problems and surviving future shocks for the benefit of the next 7 generations. We can do this here. We can be a beacon in the Salish Sea. The first step is simply to imagine it can be done. Then go on and do it together. Are you in?
I'm here with something to say. We're turning the tide to a new day. So grab us some kayaks, paddle around from the north down to Puget Sound. With the wind as our sail, we'll dance with the whales until we're Salt Spring Island bound. And here comes the singer, singing his song, till the whole coast is singing along, like turning a tide. We're turning the tide, coming together, sticking through all the stormy weather. The plan is in motion, move like the ocean, let the waves take us somewhere better. 'Cause I'm done running, I'm done hiding, I'm here with something to say. Turning the tide to a new day. I'm in love with the islands, in love with the shores, and I don't think I could love them anymore. In love with the people, I'm in love with the towns, in love with the sights, I'm in love with the sounds, in love with